Hi, this is Tim Gustafson. Welcome to the ALC podcast. It's June 11th, 2020. I'm here with Jason Neiman, my lovely co-host.
Thank you. Good to be here.
With Good Brand Company. Jason and I have been partnering, doing podcasts here for, I don't even know how long, last year and a half or so.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
And so we thought we'd switch it up today. Typically Jason's in the hosting chair and I'm the co-host, but we're going to do a little different. Sort of a sign of the times. We have to be doing things a little bit differently these days in order to make a go of it because things have changed, no doubt. And so our topic, we thought today a topic that might be pertinent and something that would work for us as a discussion is about the creativity that we need to have today in the environment that we're in. And so what does that creativity look like? So that's sort of the topic to start. And so Jason, what are your thoughts?
Well, good questions. It is weird being on this side of the camera, or on the mic, just being a little different. But yeah, obviously some of the things we're facing right now, both with COVID and with the protests and different things, Black Lives Matter, everything, it's definitely shifted the landscape for us as marketers, as you can imagine, branding people. We're trying to navigate the waters as well as anybody, and not only are we trying to navigate the waters for ourselves as a business and as people, but we're trying to help our clients manage their businesses as well. And I know that's something that you're doing as a coach every single day. And so yeah, the landscape has changed. Have you seen in your conversations with people a difficulty with them being creative leadership? Have you seen some of those things change out? I know just as anecdotally, there seems to be some fatigue setting in with people where they started out saying, "Oh, we can get through this, and this isn't going to be a big deal." But as this thing is extending out and leading in, certainly feels like it's much more difficult.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. It's tough. I mean, we've been in this now for what is it? Is this week 11? I think
something like that. 12, maybe even 12. Yeah,
maybe 12. So I mean, that's a long haul, and
right.
It's one thing if you're prepared for it. If we were expecting that something was going to be coming, but this hit us hard and fast, and I don't know. It sort of we started out on our heels with this. We didn't start charging into it, and so I think it sort of set everybody back. Didn't realize, I don't think, the implications economically, let alone all the implications with regard to school, staying at home, what that looks like, how we go shopping. Everything was going to change. We didn't know that when we first started this. We couldn't have imagined it, but it came upon us and hit us. And so I think starting on your heels is hard, but then it's been long. It's been a long time coming, and starting to get back into it. And I guess, as we start getting back into this, there's so many questions that come to mind, with the folks that I'm talking to. They are, some of them are really struggling with it. Others, it's business as usual. Others are having bang up years. Some companies I've talked to, this one group laid off 200 people. Another one's looking at laying off 100 people. Another group, they all their work is dried up. Everything was going great. They had enough work, and then stuff started getting pulled left and right. And so they think they're looking at cutting half their staff. I mean, it's back and forth, but even with those that are going full go, there's a ton of questions that they have. How do we come back? How do we? There's so many unknowns that we have, and what does it look like when we come back? What are the expectations?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? I mean, the list of questions goes on and on and on, and I think there's even fatigue with the number of questions that we have to answer.
Right. And uncertainty, because you can't. One of the things that a lot of companies have been able to do for the past few years is plan Okay, well, by this time we're going to be looking at this, and by this time we're going to be moving into this phase. And I think something that we're struggling with right now, even with my clients, are things like, how are we going to move forward when we don't know when X is going to happen or Y is going to happen? And so you sort of just are paddling, treading water, and waiting to see what's going to happen. We're waiting to see if we're able to make decisions. As an example, do you sign a lease for 3 to 5 years on your business? Or do you make the decision to hold off on that and work from home? Do you, take a PPP loan and keep your staff on for 8.5 weeks or 8 weeks, or 2.5 months of pay period, and commit to having those employees when 3 months or 4 months from now you still may not be in a better situation than you are right now. So there's a lot of that decision making that's happening, and I think your topic of being creative and figuring out how to approach this particular business situation we're in right now is very timely, because as a creative company that we are, an agency, a branding agency, our creative is now having to be doubled, right? We're trying to be creative for our clients, but we're also trying to be creative to be leaders and to make sure that we're enabling our clients to do things that are innovative and different. One of the things I will say, which I think is a positive, is this is making people think very differently about their business, and where people were always afraid of change, this is forcing people into change. And the question is, how do you then react to that? Do you react with freezing and not wanting to change and digging your heels in? Or do you just accept it and roll with whatever the punches are, whatever you're dealing with at the moment? Or are you trying to get out in front of it, and are you trying to do things that are proactive so that you stay ahead of the curve and you're not being forced to do things that you don't want to do outside of whatever your control is? So those are the things that we're trying to stay focused on, and trying to help our clients staying focused on, is trying to stay one step ahead of whatever it is that your challenges are. And it's not easy.
No, not easy at all, because these are spaces that we haven't been in before. And that is creativity, is being out in front and charging into it, taking the opportunity to do things and think differently, think differently. And I think you hit it right on the head, reactive. How are we reacting to it? And we don't want to be reacting, obviously. We want to be looking at this uncertainty in the face, and thinking about what are the things that we need to do to get there. So, I think it goes back to the idea of vision, purpose. What's that look like? What are the values that I'm basing my decisions on? What are those beliefs that are still true? What are the beliefs that limit me? So how do I think through that so that I can have the best outcome?
Right.
So I think that's number one for me, is you got to think about that top side of it. And in any vision, we don't have all the answers.
Right.
We just know now that it's very uncertain. There's no question, it's super uncertain.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's take advantage of that. What are the opportunities that are presented now that weren't before, that we can jump in and go with?
Right.
So
let's go. No, please go ahead.
So one company I was talking to, they're a company that deals with disinfecting. And the CEO is a brilliant guy, risk taker. Early in February, he went out and purchased all sorts of equipment and PPE. He was out in front of the curve, invested a huge amount of money, took the risk. Wow, is it paying off?
Right, sure.
Guys are going gangbusters right now. And it still took him a while to get all the equipment and so forth, but he had the foresight and the vision, and to be creative around it and to take the risk. And I think that's what we have to do. It's no longer business as usual.
No.
It can't be.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. We've changed. We have clients that are in a space where they really require a lot of face to face with people to do tours, for instance. Senior living communities where people have to come to the campus, they meet with a marketing associate, they take a tour of the community, they come back 3 or 4 times, they eat lunch with them in the restaurant on campus. They go through and look at all the different fitness equipment and everything, and then they go through the healthcare areas. Once you need that kind of assisted living or skilled nursing, imagine what has happened in that industry right now. Right.
Can't do
First
it.
of all,
And
first of all, they're completely locked down.
yeah,
Nobody's allowed on campus. So we've had to shift, and what we did is we put into place for our clients. We do this podcasting thing, but we put into place a webinar series that was sort of out of the box. So instead of doing your typical face-to-face, we're doing things like sending out mailers to people, being on social media, working with the people that are on their mailing lists already or on their contact lists to do virtual meetings with people. We're also doing 3D tours of the campuses now.
nice.
Where there's drone footage, there's they're sharing a Zoom screen, for instance, and showing the different models that are available and talking to that, even zooming in with adult children who are part of that decision making process if the seniors want that. So that shift in the industry would never have happened that quickly had we not had this happen.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is it's much cheaper for them to do it online because they don't have to have people coming in big groups and serving them food and reserving the space. It's much more focused because they're able to have their script, their presentation ready to go, just like they would in a big group setting. But they're able to basically know who's coming in and have those people fill out forms. We're doing, because it's in a webinar format, we're doing polls during the webinars, asking people questions. Like,
Wow.
how far out are you from making a decision? Are you 3 months? Are you 6 months? Are you a year or more? While it's going on, the people are able to go in and ask questions. And then as a moderator, we're able to then shift those questions to the people on the panel. And then we're able to set up immediate meetings with those people at the end because there's a post survey that says, hey, would you like to have a further conversation? Yes, call me in the next 3 days or text me or whatever. And they fill that form out and they're going. Now, I could tell you that we've been pushing for a format like this with our clients for years. And because it's always been status quo, it's too much trouble to change. Well, now they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So they're making this change, and it's sort of like, maybe we should have done this a long time ago.
Right.
But that was getting creative to figure out how you shift from the face-to-face model to now more of a virtual model. And is it less and lacking because it's not in person and you're not shaking hands and you're not, yeah, it's a little bit less. But are you also gaining some things? Are you also gaining those people to be more connected with you virtually even after they step off the campus? Yes. So there's a lot of things in that industry and in many others where, to your point, it's forcing that creativity where people wouldn't have been comfortable doing that because they just kind of go about their daily tasks.
Status quo.
Right, and to get outside of that, it's extra effort. Well, now that extra effort is because of necessity versus
Right.
desire.
Yeah.
So I think that's the good part of this, is that people have been stretched a little bit to change the way that they're looking at their businesses.
Yeah, and I think it will provide additional options going forward because maybe at some point we can go back so that they could have the on-campus tours, as well as in addition to the
Right.
webinars and like you said, the cost is less, and so maybe a greater stretch, a greater group of people that they're connecting to
Right.
earlier on, and then the focus, maybe the last move is for them to come in and visit the campus. But
Right.
whatever, I think these, as we think about life, these things provide us additional options.
Yeah.
If we take it down to a personal level, people working from home doing Zoom calls and Skype calls and Google Meets and so forth. All these kinds of things are new and different for many people, but it provides another option going forward for businesses. So maybe businesses don't need the space that they used to, or the capacity or volume of space that they've had. Right. So maybe that helps in their cost. So I think there's a lot of different things that are going on that people can have to rethink, or are in the process of rethinking what this looks like when we come out of it. And we haven't even talked about the whole idea of safety and the whole concept around how do we safely, as businesses, how do we take care of our employees and make sure that they are traveling from point to point in a safe manner. If it's under our responsibility, then how are they doing that? Are we providing them a space? If you think about the high-rise buildings, uptown Charlotte, they've got thousands, tens of thousands of people in some of the buildings. And let's assume that they have 12 elevators per building. I've heard from industry expert that they're only going to allow 2 people on an elevator at a time. So if you think 12 times 2 is 24, and what's the average flight of an elevator? At minimum, it's 2 minutes.
Right.
For some of these high rises, a lot more. But 2 minutes to up and down, that's 30 runs an hour times 24. What's that, about 600-700 people an hour? If you got 10,000 people in your building, that's 30 plus hours to get people up and down. That's ridiculous. It doesn't work. The model doesn't work. So how do you accommodate that?
Yeah.
Does that mean, is that with masks with the 2, or is that only 2, mask or not? If they all have masks, then how many? Is it 4? Well, still, that doesn't compute. It doesn't work. So there's all sorts of things. Maybe in their office space, they're fine and they can stay 6 feet apart and all that. But wow, the access and egress is a whole nother consideration.
Right. Yeah, and the other piece of that. So let's talk about that. Let's take it another step further. The open office space has been the thing for the past 5 or 7 years, right?
Or more.
You work with a client that their whole purpose is building office spaces, right?
Yep.
And so this opens up an opportunity for them to figure out how to safely put people in that general formula. But how do you do it? I'll give you a great example. I have a friend, a good close personal friend that works for a major bank here in Charlotte. And they just, in the middle of last year, went to a model where nobody was ever going to have their own laptop anymore. You would go to a desk in an open area, you log in on the computer that's on the desk, you log in with your own credentials, and you sit wherever you want, and you basically start working, right? When you're done, you log off, you go home. The next day, you come in, you can sit in a different desk with a different keyboard and a different monitor. So let's just talk for a minute about the germs that basically are being spread because you're sharing now a keyboard, a mouse, a different chair every day, a monitor in front of you, the desktop that's there, and all of that is completely open with no, their whole model has just been blown up.
Yep.
Because all that has to happen is a group of people get sick, and they're out, and who knows where that was actually contracted, because you can't zero in on wherever it was because the people are always in different places and they're all using different computers. So,
and many of it's asymptomatic, so you don't know when it happens or who's there at the time.
Exactly. And it's 14 days later.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to go back and search back 14 days. So think about the opportunities that people have in that industry to basically figure out if people are going to be in that mass area, how do you keep those people safe? Do you then reinvest again and say, well, now you get your own seat at that one place, and we're going to have to put screens up between every person, and instead of every 3 feet where we did have them as cattle, we're now going to do 6 feet apart. We're going to take a computer out every other computer. I mean, it's just insane. Like the amount of change just from this one thing.
Yeah. Or here's a laptop, just work from home, and we'll get rid of the space.
Right. And then, then you get, are they actually working?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you start to get auditing of people, how long are they online, and people trying to, there's just this whole thing. Now, as an agency, we're super lucky because we're pretty technologically savvy. We do Zoom calls with our clients all the time. We've been using, as you know, Tim, and you have too.
Yep.
We've both been using Zoom for multiple years, so it's not any different for us. What's different for us is we have an office, but a lot of our team members work from home a lot of the time anyway. So for us, it was like no big deal. But for people that are used to going into the office every day, that's a big difference. And how do you stay creative in your one space in your house, and then go to dinner and then come back to your desk and finish up the work you were working on, and then before you go to bed, walk into your office and check your email. There's no separation. So, even for me, I had to take a couple of days off last week because I was like, I'm burnt. I'm completely burnt out. An average of 6 Zoom calls a day, or Google Meets or Skype calls, back to back. I put in a line for my lunch hour where I can't be booked, but back to back to back every single day.
Yeah, that wears on you.
Right.
And also, it's a different kind of way of working. Where face-to-face for some people is energizing, some people it wears them out. Zoom calls, same thing. You might work great face-to-face with somebody in a room, but on a Zoom call, it might be a whole different feel for you and how you take information in and out, and watching a screen versus a 3D person. There's a lot of things that are different, even though, we've been doing it, but now you're doing it every day, all day, every hour, every minute. It can catch up with you.
It's a big deal. It's definitely gotten in. So
let me jump in. So I got another thought here. So vision, purpose, mission, all those kinds of things, values, those are all super important for a leader to make sure that people understand. But now there also is another opportunity that may or may not have been available before to the mind, but now you're not next to each other. You have the opportunity to potentially grow and to scale your business. You're not all together potentially. So how do you engage people? How do you get the folks that are your direct reports to take on additional responsibilities? How do you provide them the opportunity to grow and to learn so that, one, they can take things on that you've been doing, and so you can scale yourself and go do other things, start another division, start another work stream in your business. There's so many things that are happening, and you need to lay the groundwork, and that groundwork is trust. And so you have to have developed, and if you haven't developed, then you got to start developing trust so that people can start taking things on. You can do the mentoring and developing and care for them and help them in the way that they need it in order for them to grow, and then ultimately so that you can grow. And as you do that, and as you scale, then your company becomes more profitable.
So let's talk about mentoring and development of your team members. It seems like it becomes incrementally harder virtually than it does in person. Would you agree with that? Do you think that that's harder for people, leaders, to mentor and develop people at a virtual level instead of face-to-face? And being where you're sort of, a bird on the wall or a fly on the wall in a meeting, and you're watching how that person handles situations and things like that?
Yeah, so people often ask me that with regard to coaching. So, um, face to face or Zoom or phone, what's best? And I think depending upon the skill of the person, their ability to listen, how they can play in this kind of an environment, is really what makes it work or not work. I can coach somebody on the phone. I can coach somebody in a Zoom or face to face. I believe that face to face is best, just because there's a larger, more perspectives on body language, on facial expressions, on interactions, and so forth, tones of voice, and that kind of thing. Tones of voice and the verbal stuff comes through in any media. So anyway, face to face is best, I believe. I don't know that it necessarily will hinder us. Sometimes face to face can be a distraction too. You got all this stuff going on. If all I'm doing is listening on the phone intently,
yeah,
then I'm not distracted with the visual things.
Right.
And I can hear the tone. I can hear the angst. I can understand empathy is needed. The pause. How long is that pause? That doesn't seem like it's the same length as before. Something's
Right.
going on there. Somebody's thinking. The wheels are grinding. Whatever. So I think it depends upon the individual, what works
Yeah.
and what doesn't work. Process still has to happen, though. Got to
Yeah.
show caring and empathy, and you have to connect with them in the way that they need it.
Right. We were talking about. I have a friend that works in fintech, so the financial part of the banks and things like that, and we were having this discussion, and I have this funny sense of having these things that I visually pick up on and share with a group verbally. And you've experienced this too, where
Yep.
like I watch something happen and then I try to communicate it. So I was explaining to a group of people, and my friend that's in fintech, he basically handles, digital payments, how credit cards run through at retail, all that kind of stuff. And I was explaining to a group of people that he was in a group with me, how weird it is that we still use those credit card folios when you go to a restaurant. Those little black things that you put your card in.
Yeah.
And I was explaining this whole process. I'm like, because I'm sort of a, germaphobe. I mean, I'm not, clinical, but I'm sort of a germaphobe in person. I love Apple Pay because you just like put your phone next to the thing. You don't have to touch all the buttons.
Yeah.
And I said, if you ever watch the whole process of how many times that little folio gets touched and how it goes about, we have the conversation. There's two conversations. One's about security and one's about germs. So let's just walk through for a second. Indulge me here, Tim. Let's walk through for a second the process of that folio, of where it goes. So they come, they ask you how your dinner was. You're like, it was good. Are you ready for the check? Yeah, I'm ready for the check. So they go back to some POS system somewhere. They print out a receipt that they touch. They then open up a folio that probably hasn't been cleaned in 3 weeks, if ever. They put that piece of paper in the folio. They close it. They take a pen, right, that's been in their apron that may not have been washed in the past 3 weeks, right? They give you that folio. You look at it. You pick the folio up in your hands. You look at it. You take the piece of paper out. You look at how much it is. Then you take the card that you've had in your wallet that's touched many people. You put the card in the folio. You close the folio back up. You give it back to them. They go and run your card. Are you following me here?
Oh, yeah.
They go and run your card. Then they print out a second piece of paper. Actually, two pieces of paper. One that's your copy and one that's their copy. That pen's in there. They bring that folio back to your table. You open the folio back up. You spread it out. You sign both of those with their pen, right? You put your copy in your wallet or your copy, whatever. Some people don't take their copy. Then you give the folio and leave it on the table, and basically they either come pick it up or you leave, right? And then they pick the folio back up after you've eaten, wiped your mouth with your napkin, all that kind of stuff. They take it back to the POS system. They take all the paperwork out of it. They take the folio, they put it on the stack of the other folios that they have there, right? So, and then they take the pen and put it back in their apron and give it to the next person. So if you just look at that process and how cumbersome and how much effort, work, germs passing, touching, potential to get soiled, potential to not get cleaned, isn't that like stage one for a restaurant? Don't you go, okay, all of the other things we do are pretty bad, but that's like one at the top of the heap.
Oh,
If it were me as a restaurant owner, manager, industry person, I'd be like, that's out. We're not doing that anymore, right? So when you go to Europe or you go to Canada or somewhere else like that, they bring the little box to your table.
Yeah.
You take your chip, you put it in the thing. They give you the thing, you put in your credit card tip. Even that, it's like, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So they don't do tips in Europe, right? You give them change or whatever it is. You can add tip if you want, but that's at least one step better because you're not passing that folio back and forth. At least you're going directly to the machine, right?
Right.
They bring it.
Right.
Okay, so that's the first piece, and I know I'm going long about this, but I'm trying to make a point. The other piece of this is people are like, I'm not putting my credit card in on the internet. People are going to pick that up. Well, do you know when you go to a restaurant and you take your credit card and you put it in a folio and they disappear for 10 minutes? How many people could get their hands on that credit card, write down the number, and, oh, by the way, the little security code on the back?
Yep.
And take a guess at what your zip code is? Like, you're willing and able to give your credit card over to somebody and let them disappear for 10 minutes? You have no idea what they're doing with your card.
And
But
you don't even know who they are.
Right, but you're worried about putting your credit card number online? Right? It's insane. Like, the world we live in, we are just so accustomed to doing things that we don't want to make the effort to change because that's just the way it's done. And
Well,
my point...
And the status quo is easy because that's how we do it. It's status
Right.
quo. So and even whether it's safe or not, status quo in our minds means safety.
Right.
It's
Right.
no
Right.
risk.
Right. So
right.
how do you get creative and change that process?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is like just rethink that whole process. Why do you have to do that? Why isn't there an easier way for you? Can't they just bring a square reader over to your table, have you pay with your phone?
Yep.
Swipe your card, stick your, if you go into Chick-fil-A drive-through now,
Yeah.
they just hold the machine out, you stick your card in and take your card out. They don't require you to put a PIN number in it. They don't require you to sign for it. That's change. That's change because they're minimizing risk.
Yep.
But what they didn't know is the consequence of that is that they're making efficiencies on top of it.
Oh yeah.
Right? Figuring out how to use technology to create efficiencies. So in all of this, what I'm trying to get to is now is a time where you can get creative and change something and people won't look even a side eye at you because you're making changes for the better of the people that are your customers. You're making changes for the better safety of your employees. You're making changes just because, you know what, maybe there's a better way to do this. Yeah. And that's where I think the creativity needs to come in. We're forced to do things, but are we accepting that forced change is making what we're doing better, or are we just changing it to do it differently? And so I'd like to get to the conversation with people of, if you're going to make a change, make a change. One of my clients is a bowling alley. You want to talk about changes?
Whew. There you go.
Putting fingers in a ball, using the same shoes other people are using.
It's crazy.
Bowling on the same lanes as those people, touching their ball as it comes through. I mean, crazy levels of germ options there. So
let me change us up a little bit here.
Yep.
So this is all as a result of the COVID-19 and the challenges associated with that. And so that has brought about the idea of change. It's forced us to think differently about change. So if this is the only reason and only way that we're going to change, what about the racial injustices that are going on right now and the protests? So this has been something that's been going on in our country for whatever, 200, 300, 400 years.
Yep.
So here's an opportunity for us to change as a culture, as individuals, to be better, to act better, to connect and have empathy for. And so this idea of protests brings about at least the hint of change, but it doesn't force it. We've had this coronavirus has forced us into a situation where we have to change. And I wonder what it's going to take with something that is so embedded as the stereotyping and the discrimination that's occurred and occurs. What is it going to take for us to change there? And I don't know that we can answer that today, but that's a question I guess I want to leave us with for something to think about. And as leaders, we have the responsibility to set the example. We have the responsibility to do the right thing with regard to social distancing, with regard to setting up situations in which people can grow and learn and develop. That is our responsibility as leaders. So we need to step into it. And this is a time when, like you were saying, people almost expect it, and it's okay to change now because we're forced. Well, so then let's jump into it. Whether it be because of safety, whether it be because of social injustice, whether it be because of efficiency, whatever it is, as leaders, this is a golden opportunity of uncertainty for us to make a difference.
How do you end any better than that, honestly? No, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is your opportunity. A lot of people are looking at this as a negative, but we have to flip the script and say, what are our opportunities now to make those changes and get creative and figure it out? So I agree, 100%.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, thank you. Thank you for joining me today in our podcast. And so how do people get in touch with you? You always ask me that. How do they get in touch with you?
It's a good question. So goodbrandcompany.com is our website, all spelled out, Good Brand Company. Jason at goodbrandcompany.com, obviously. And then you can call me. There's a phone number on the website. I won't recite it out for you, but there's a phone number on the website. Feel free to call or send in a form, and we'll get back to you quickly. Yeah, awesome. Appreciate that. How do they get in touch with you, Tim?
Nice, good question. Tim at alccoaches.com is the email. 704-995-3870 is the phone number, and then website is alccoaches.com.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining us today, and look forward to our next podcast coming soon.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.